The lights of Hollywood never reached him, not because they couldn't, but because he turned away. Albert Finney was supposed to be everything the film world adored. Handsome, magnetic, and born for the screen. After Tom Jones made him an international sensation, studios fought to own his name, magazines called him the next Laurence Olivier, and the industry prepared its crown. But Finney never came to claim it. He refused James Bond. He refused Gandalf. He refused every invitation that promised immortality, and even when the Oscars called his name, he stayed home. In a world built on applause, he chose silence. And for decades, no one truly knew why. Only after his death did the letters surface the quiet confessions of a man who had everything, yet wanted nothing the spotlight could give. The question now is not what he achieved, but what he escaped from. Albert Finney was born in Salford, England, in 1936, the son of a bookmaker who never imagined his boy would one day stand among cinema's giants. From the smoky streets of post-war Britain to the grand stages of the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, Finney's rise was nothing short of cinematic. His talent was raw, electric, impossible to ignore. When he appeared in Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, audiences saw something new, an anger, a realism, a heartbeat that belonged to working-class Britain. Then came Tom Jones, a wild, daring film that turned him into a global star and earned him his first Academy Award nomination. Offers from Hollywood flooded in leading men, heroic spies, grand adventures. But Finney's answer was always the same. No. He wasn't chasing fame. He wasn't interested in becoming a myth. He wanted something far rarer to stay human in a world that rewarded performance over truth. As the world celebrated his brilliance, he quietly built a life outside the spotlight, one that few ever saw. And behind that calm exterior lay the real story of a man who fought not for fame, but for freedom. He never looked like a movie star, and that's exactly why he became one. Albert Finney grew up in Salford, a gray industrial town where dreams felt smaller than the factory chimneys. His father was a bookmaker. His mother, a quiet woman who believed her son's imagination was too large for the streets he walked. At RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, Finney's teachers saw something different, a young man who didn't perform, but became. He carried the intensity of working-class Britain into the polished world of Shakespeare, and that tension made him unforgettable. His first big step came with Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, 1960. Finney didn't just play Arthur Seaton, he embodied the restless, defiant voice of a generation that was tired of pretending. The film cracked open British cinema, turning realism into rebellion. Then Tom Jones, 1963, arrived wild, witty, and scandalous, and suddenly, Finney was everywhere. The movie won 4 Oscars, his face filled magazine covers, and his name crossed the Atlantic. Hollywood wanted him, the public adored him. But even then, when the world called him the next big thing, Finney began to retreat. He once said, "I don't want to be trapped in success, I just want to act." The spotlight had found him, but he already sensed the heat beneath its glow. Success came fast, too fast for a man who valued silence over celebration. By the mid-1960s, Albert Finney had become a household name. Directors courted him, producers offered fortunes, and tabloids wanted every detail of his private life. Yet the more his fame grew, the further he withdrew. He rejected the idea of a movie star. He refused to hire a publicist or manager, refused interviews, and ignored the glamour that came with fame. To Finney, the press was a circus, and he wanted no part in it. "I act," he once said. That's all. Offers from Hollywood flooded in. The role of James Bond after Sean Connery, major studio projects, and even personal calls from producers begging him to relocate to Los Angeles. He said no to all of them. The noise of fame, he believed, only drowns out the truth of one's work. Behind that calm defiance, though, came a quiet cost. Friends noticed he became increasingly private, almost guarded. He rarely appeared at industry events, skipping every Oscar ceremony despite 5 nominations. Some mistook his silence for arrogance, others sensed a deeper fatigue, a quiet rebellion against the machinery of fame itself. While the world chased recognition, Finney was trying to keep something no award could give his peace. Time, for Albert Finney, did not bring decline, it brought distance. He continued to work, but on his own terms. Roles that challenged him, never ones that glorified him. In Murder on the Orient Express, 1974, He transformed beneath layers of makeup into Hercule Poirot, earning another Oscar nod, then disappeared again. He avoided Los Angeles, lived quietly in England, and refused to become a brand. Colleagues described him as a man who loved the work, but hated the worship. He would vanish between projects, surfacing only when a script truly spoke to him. But the years took their toll. As his health began to waver, he kept everything secret. No public statements, no dramatic announcements, just absence. To many, it felt as though he had faded from the screen. But in truth, he had simply stepped out of view. While other stars aged under the camera's relentless eye, Finney chose invisibility. He once told a friend, "Fame doesn't fade, it clings. You have to peel it off yourself." It was a quiet confession of exhaustion, not from acting, but from being seen. By the 2000s, his name had become a whisper, remembered fondly but spoken softly. The industry moved on, but Finney seemed content, an actor no longer performing for anyone but himself. When Albert Finney passed away in 2019, the news arrived without spectacle, no statement from a publicist, no planned tribute, just a line in the morning papers. Albert Finney has died, aged 82. It felt fitting. Even in death, he chose simplicity. For decades, he had lived away from cameras, spending his later years in London with his wife, Penny Delmage. Friends said he still went to the theater, still read scripts, still loved the art but never the attention. His illness had been known only to those closest to him. To the world, he had simply gone silent. When the headlines appeared, Hollywood mourned a man it never truly understood. Directors spoke of his honesty, actors of his generosity, and critics of his defiance. There was grief but also admiration. Because in an era obsessed with exposure, Albert Finney remained pure. His final refusal wasn't dramatic, it was dignified. He left without warning, without farewell, as if slipping quietly off stage once the story had been told. And in that silence, the world realized. He had lived the way he acted truthfully, completely, and without need for applause. Long after Albert Finney's voice faded, his presence still lingers not in gossip columns or documentaries, but in the faces of the actors who came after him. To them, he was proof that greatness didn't require surrendering your soul. His performances still pulse with life. The raw rebellion of Saturday night and Sunday morning, the mischievous freedom of Tom Jones, the weary humanity of Erin Brockovich, they form a portrait of an artist who lived inside every role, then vanished the moment the camera stopped rolling. You can feel him in Daniel Day-Lewis's stillness, in Gary Oldman's intensity, in every British actor who refuses to chase Hollywood's empty promises. Finney didn't just perform, he redefined what it meant to be an actor. To create, disappear, and leave truth behind. Even now, audiences return to his films, not out of nostalgia, but to remember how real cinema once felt. He left no memoir, no tell-all, no curated image, only the work. And perhaps that is his greatest legacy, that a man who said no to fame became one of its purest legends. Albert Finney's story is not one of downfall, but of deliverance. He stood at the center of fame's brightest circle and simply chose to step away. Where others built empires of image, he built a quiet life, a rebellion made of silence. His fame was brilliance, his shadow, conviction. Together, they shaped a man who refused to let the world define him. In every performance, he gave a glimpse of truth but never the whole of himself. That was the part he kept sacred. Fame may have tried to claim him, but Finney proved that freedom can exist even within the golden cage of cinema. He didn't need to be everywhere to be remembered because real legends don't burn out. They fade into meaning. Which Albert Finney do you remember, the fiery rebel of Tom Jones, or the quiet soul who walked away from it all? If he were still here, what would you ask him about fame, about freedom, or about the price of saying no? Share your thoughts below. Tell us which moment, which role, which truth of his still lingers with you. And if this story made you see the light and shadow of fame a little differently, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because here, on Fame and Shadows, every star has its story, and every silence has its meaning.